sweep down and lift up any debris and also mix in and give an uprise and put my intake somewhere around over here. Okay, and that's nicer because you can control that. I may have to add a small little power head to this tank. I don't know yet until I'm actually playing with it, and these are the things that every aquascape is different and you're going to have to adjust. But I may have a flow issue considering that this is such a big mounting setup here that I may have to put a power head maybe back here to send the flow that way. The smaller tanks, a hang-on is perfectly fine.
What about activated carbon? You're going to take out a lot of tension out?
Yes. Carbon you should really use when you're trying to remove medicines, or if you really can't stand the look of the tannins in water, run carbon for about a week. For the most part, carbon will pull the nutrients, the fertilizers that you're spending money on and putting into your tank. The other problem is that carbon has, not that it leaches back out, but there are other products out there, like Seachem Purigen, which will pull the organics out without pulling out the nutrients. And it's reusable. I mean, we'd love to sell it to you once a week, but most people have had Purigen for 2 and 3 years. Keep reusing it by putting it in. Okay, so what we're going to do on this side is that we're going to put a contrasting plant. And these are also crypts, but they're a very light green in color. Since we're going to have a lot of reds and darker greens here, I wanted to bring in an island of light green.
How deep are you going?
Right now it's looking like 2.5 to 3 inches towards the back. I'm also going to plant a single giant pear grass plant in the back to kind of play with the back of this, but it's going to have a different texture. Giant pear grass looks like giant hairgrass, or just long stems without any leaves, but it does well with higher light. But since it's going to reach the height of the tank, it's going to get all the light that it needs. Now this is where we're going to attach some of this fern to the back of these branches like this. Okay? And there's 2 ways to do it. The much easier way is the staple gun. But here I won't be able to get the reach. The other way is through use of cotton thread. Now you think cotton thread is easy to find until you try to look for some. Everybody sells polyester blend. So I went to Joann Fabrics, and when you asked them for real cotton thread, they knew what it was. The reason we like to use cotton thread is that it will naturally dissolve in water versus polyester, which will stay there forever and ever. By the way, this is easy if your hands are not wet. Or if you have somebody very tiny get into the tank and help you. I chose brown, black, any of that will work. The fern will do the rest at attaching itself. Well, it would have been easier if I would have done this ahead of time, right? I have here, which is another fern, which is the Bobitis. And this is that large fern that everybody saw. It's a different style of fern. And we are going to attach it to here so it'll grow along this. Gotta see the front of the tank. I haven't seen the front yet. Oh, that's what it looks like. Okay. Because as they say in Health and Beauty, moisturize. Where would this guy look really good? This one right here. Okay. There we go. Yes, we get some audience participation. Now, folks, the nice thing about this setup is that you can scale this to whatever tank size you have or you intend to keep. The principles are all the same. So whether you're doing a monster, 200-gallon tank, or whether you're doing a 7-gallon tank, you're going to use the same principles that you see today. Now we could do other things, like we have different mosses, willow moss. We could attach it to these pieces as well. Okay, that'll grow out nicely and wispy.
Riccia?
No. The problem is, Riccia is a floating plant. And it is a challenge to keep. So it will not grow normally. In order for it to grow attached to a piece of wood or to a piece of stone, you need to use mesh to keep it down. And then it's going to need CO2 in order to penetrate and a lot of light in order to get down there. And then every 2 weeks, the whole thing is coming apart, floating, and you have to dig out your piece of wood in Riccia and take out the mesh, plant some more, put it back in, and wait till it regrows. So you get a photo shot about once, every 2 to 3
Is there
years.
any low light that's similar?
No. Mosses. Do we have any willow moss?
In the shrimp tank.
This is willow moss. And it won't give you the same bright green look, but once it's really up and grows, it will look nice and fuzzy, and it will grow very wispy in appearance.
What about your light source? Should it always be coming down from above? What if your aquarium's outside?
Well, you'll just have to deal with your aquarium being outside.
The light source has to be top down.
No, it just needs to be in the right concentration. In other words, if you have too much light, you're going to have to do very frequent water changes and fertilize the plants more, because light is like your accelerator pedal on the car. It dictates how fast your car is going to go. So if you have a strong light source outside, then you're really not doing a low light tank. You're going to be doing a high light tank minus the CO2, and you're just going to have to watch your fertilization and your water changes. That's all.
Brandon's work in the low light tanks?
Depends on. I've seen some of them do okay in a low light, but when I'm saying low light, somewhere around the 30 part, which is more like a medium light. Extremely low light, like Nubia's grips, it won't do well. They come from rice paddies, Thailand, and from very shallow water. Also where betas and some of the anatotoids, gouramis and licorice gouramis, and those come from, and the water is only about that deep, so they're getting plenty of light. Now the water is very tea-stained, so it's a dark water, but it's still, the sun has incredible penetrating properties. It's still pushing a fair amount of light. Now, normally you would want to do this with this whole thing outside of your tank, but for effect, this was done in the tank. So when you all go home and you try to do this outside. Do all your moss, your fern planting ahead of time, and life will be a lot easier. And then your fingers won't be cramped up, and you'll go sleep well. Okay. So we have plenty of crypts. We have these crypts that I'm about to add, they're called luteas. And they get to be a little bit taller than the other ones that I added. These guys will end up growing up to 8 inches in height. So the undersides are all red. So what I want to do with these guys is put them more further in the background. tweezers. Anybody see my tweezers?
On top of the light.
Ah. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to add the sand, and we're going to add then the anubias in between the rocks. Any suggestions for the layout, guys? Boy, it's a tough crowd tonight.
Looks good, yeah.
All right. Okay.
The moss that you have on the, will that turn brown and look funny?
The moss, no. The moss, should stay more of an evergreen. Okay. These. Now, one of the things I like doing, this is Crip Balancé, and it grows very thin. The leaves have a texture to them, and in a lot of these aquascapes, the artists actually interject them around the focal point. So instead of just being used in the background, they actually will stick them between the foreground and in between. And one of the effects is that among all the foliage, you'll have these like loose blades coming out.
So the name of that?
Crip Balancé, B-A-L-N-S-A-E. By the way, all the plants that you're seeing featured tonight, we stock. And we have in stock. Now the next part's going to be where it gets tricky. Because we're going to have to add the sand without making a mess. Which is what Miriam is doing. She is kind of like moving everything up and away from the edges of the glass so you don't see the black substrate. So you want to give the illusion that everything is being grown in sand. Good, I can start. That's okay, I'll grab it. Here, hold the light out of there. Also, I'm gonna need it.
Granularity of the gravel, that stuff you're putting in now is much more fine than the stuff that's already.
Yes.
What plants grow in that stuff?
Very few. Only if you